Hello, I just want to welcome everybody. We're going to have a short presentation on juvenile expungements, and we'll talk a little bit about that. If there's any questions, you can put them in the chat box. Maybe the easiest way to go about doing that. But otherwise, we'll get off without a hitch here. I'm Christine Campbell. I'm the statewide pro bono director for Kansas Legal Services. My position is funded through the Kansas Bar Foundation CRHA grant program. And I go around doing a bunch of expungements, and this is one of those projects. So we have a bunch of pro bono attorneys who are going to be taking juvenile and adult cases if as necessary for pro bono purposes, which means there is no cost other than any filing fees. So we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through. But we are recording today just for your information, and this will be available on our website later in case you miss anything. So first off, what are we doing here? We're having an expungement event. This is targeted at juveniles. That doesn't mean we're only doing juvenile cases. But an expungement is the removal of arrest or conviction from somebody's criminal record. Typically, when you apply for housing or a job, you will have somebody run a background check, and you can get a copy of that when they're done. If you're denied the apartment or if you're denied the job, you are entitled to a copy of that. But it will show up. So any convictions you have, any juvenile adjudications you have, those will show up on a background check that somebody pulls. When you get an expungement of that record, though, none of that arrest information or conviction information will be disclosed. There's certain exceptions that we'll talk a little bit about, but normally and under normal circumstances, once that case is expunged, nobody can see it. So why do people get expungements? Why are expungements important? Basically, a criminal conviction or a juvenile adjudication can follow you around. It can impact your employment, your ability to get housing, student loans, public assistance. I do have voting rights listed on here, and I do want to point out that it's a common misconception that if you have a felony, you are not able to vote. If you are a current felon that is on paper, meaning you're still registering or you're still on parole or still on probation, yes, that means you are not allowed to vote. But once you are done with all that supervision, you are more than welcome to go register to vote. You still have to re-register, but just want to let everybody know that's a common misconception that we get a lot, and that's never something that should hold somebody back. So next, after that, after a record is cleared or expunged, you can honestly answer that you were not convicted of that crime. No longer will show up on your background check. There are some issues that we're having with that. So if you do get an expungement and somebody is able to see it later, please give us a call because we're trying to track some of those issues and see if we can combat them. Employers, landlords, general public will not be able to see it, meaning if you go to the courthouse, you search your name, it won't show up. Doesn't mean you aren't entitled to a copy of it, because after something is expunged, you can still go get a copy of it. The court can still see it if you have a subsequent conviction. So let's say you have a DUI, you get it expunged, you get pulled over for another DUI, that will count as your second DUI, and the court is able to see that for the purposes of determining that your second DUI is your second instead of your first. Now, specific employers are entitled to that information, and in the order of expungement, it will list the people you have to divulge that information to. It's not a lot when you're a juvenile, and when you have a juvenile adjudication you're getting expunged, then it's more one of those things where they're allowed to see the information if DCF or somebody asks for it. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But ultimately, and usually for the most part, you do not have to divulge that information. If you're going to go be a police officer, if you're going to go to law school, if you're going to be a money market person, then some of those people or some of those jobs you do have to disclose that to. But under normal circumstances, you can answer on that job application that no, you have not been convicted. Now, I do point out there are a couple different types of expungements, and we're going to talk about all three today. There are arrest records, there are juvenile adjudications, and there's criminal convictions and diversions. Now, the last two, the juvenile adjudication and the criminal convictions and diversions, if you get those expunged, all the arrest records associated with those cases also get expunged. The arrest records is just a special circumstance. We do like to point out that you do have to have your fines and restitution payments made, as well as registration. You can't have the requirement to register, which is something that messes up a lot of people on this journey. So if you're required to register currently, you are not eligible for expungement. If you have unpaid fines, we can talk about it, and I'm more than happy to give you some advice about that. But you do have to have your fines paid before we can expunge that case. So arrest records are the one little weird one. When you have an arrest record, it's typically because you either ended up being found not guilty or because a case was never actually filed against you. Now, very rarely, I would say these are probably the least common expungement that we do are the arrest records only. Typically, you're arrested, you're either convicted or you choose diversion with that, and these are mostly when it comes to adult cases. So conviction is where you either are found guilty of a crime or you plea. Most people do some sort of plea with the district attorney. Diversion agreement is when you plead guilty but are never convicted. So when you do a diversion agreement, you basically agree, but you can legally say on job applications that you were never convicted. So I will say some employers are getting a little bit smarter, and on their job applications, they're now asking if you have ever been charged with a crime, which is one of those weird little loopholes, which technically if you were diverted of it, you do still have to say you were charged with it. So that's one of those fun little things. But an arrest expungement is just when you're arrested and then we're either found not guilty or it was dismissed or never filed. I do note that expungement is done by case number. Case may include multiple charges, so you could have one case number, but 3 or 4 charges. A lot of people, when they call about expungements, will say, oh, I've got 4 cases, when in reality they have 4 charges in one case. Expungement of conviction or diversion also includes the arrest records, as we stated, and then the eligibility requirements to expunge a diversion are the same as conviction. So as long as you've completed your diversion and that timeline still applies or is still applicable, then you do qualify. To expunge an arrest record alone, however, a little bit different. So typically, most of the time, either somebody is found not guilty or the case was dismissed or never filed. I would tell you, very rarely do we get these. Of these arrest records only cases, the most common are those last 2. It's just the only thing I would warn people is if you got arrested last week and want to get it expunged now, you're probably going to have to wait for the statute of limitations. Meaning, the court has a certain amount of time that a case can still be brought against you. A lot of times if they don't charge you, it's because they either haven't charged you or they're waiting for you to do something else so they can compound the charges. So just know that that's one of those things. You may have to wait a couple of years before we're able to get that arrest record expunged. However, there's no formal time limit. Now, if you have an adult conviction or diversion, you have to have 2 years where there is no felony against you, that you haven't been convicted of a felony, or you haven't been on probation for a felony, anything like that in the last 2 years. And then your circumstances of behavior have to warrant the expungement. There's also a timeline. You do have to wait a certain amount of time based on that, what type of case it is. So if it's a low-level felony, misdemeanors, traffic infractions, you're going to have to wait 3 years, and that 3-year wait time doesn't start until you get off probation or supervision. Some cases are 5 years, and they're listed here. Those are the more upper-level felonies, some of the vehicular homicide, and then the driving while canceled or suspended or revoked. That's one of the odd ones to me, so I always like to point out that that is a 5-year wait time. DUIs are also a little weird. Typically, it's going to be 5 years for the first one, 10 years for the second one. Just know that sometimes between the year of 2014 and 2015, if you got a DUI, it may be 7 years for the second one if it was your second one. So just know. Prior to 2006, it's just a 5-year wait time. It doesn't matter if it's your first or second. Now, there are some adult convictions that are not expungible, and the juvenile cases kind of mimic this. So typically, I tell people if it involves children, if it involves sex, or somebody dying, you're not going to be able to get it expunged. There are a couple weird ones in there where it may fall in there, it may fall not. If it's a, may not fall in there. But if it's an older case, if you have a case from the 80s or 90s, there's a very decent chance that it may be expungable. It's just going to be one of those things we have to kind of talk about. So juvenile adjudications, though, they're called adjudications instead of convictions. You're adjudicated a juvenile offender. It's the same type of thing as a conviction, just a different word. So every time you see that word adjudication, just think juvenile conviction. There are a couple different requirements. You either have to be 23 years old or have 2 years passed since discharge. You can't have any pending charges and no charges since, which if you do have any charges since, let us know. We can go ahead and figure something out there. We may just have to do your adult charges first. And then you also have to have good behavior, and then we can get it expunged. So those are the same type of things as with a adult. It's just different wording. Now, the same type of things are not expungible under the juvenile statute for expungement. So somebody dies, indecent liberty, abuse or endangering a child, same type of things are not expungible. So for this project, we've got flyers going around. We're just trying to figure out if people are eligible or not. If you have questions and you want to know if you're eligible, give us a call. If you have juvenile and adult convictions, give us a call and we'll see what we can do to figure out what we can and cannot get expunged. If you have questions about your timeline, give us a call. We're happy to screen just about anything. So a lot of people have juvenile and adult cases, and that's totally fine. Just may mean that we need to get the adult convictions expunged before we can do the juvenile case. If you have juvenile cases only, by all means call us and we'll talk about how to get those expunged as well. Because we are doing a juvenile expungement drive from now until the end of the year. We're doing a special free event, so we are doing all screenings for free. The only thing that you will have to pay, if you have to pay, is a $20 background check, and that's mostly so we can confirm what cases you've had since, so we can get all the information to fill out the pleadings. And then if there is a filing fee, which is about $195 a case, we can ask the court to waive that. It comes back to income and your ability to pay that filing fee. So if the court finds that you are not able to pay that filing fee, then the court can waive that filing fee. But it does mean that you will have to at least pay a $20 background check fee. If you can't, go ahead and give us a call and we'll see. It doesn't hurt to call us and see what your options are. And that is the next question, is how do you apply for this? You can either go online. When you go to kansaslegalservices.org, there's a little part that says how to get help. Click on there. About halfway down the page, it has a fun little walkthrough program that will walk you through our intake process, and then it has you some questions about your case, some income, some housing information, or you can call. There are some wait times. We are backed up a little bit, as you can imagine, with everything going on this year, but by all means, either apply online or call, and we're giving people calls back within 3 days, I would say. So I will check and see if there's any questions right now. If you do, go ahead and put them in the chat box. If not, you can always email me or call, or like I said, you can apply for the project and we'll answer all your questions personally, because I understand this is a public space. But if you have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Otherwise, thank you for listening and feel free to apply for the project. I'm more than happy to talk individually with people and screen them for this. Or if you have questions about general expungement and or other types of cases, please give us a call. Okay, it doesn't look like there's any questions. So thanks everybody for coming and have a great rest of your day.